such disaster. Share the story you live and master. Your planners reveal their tricks, defend problem, oh, with fix. Plan and tell what the wedding cake fell. Plan and tell, get some candles to cover the smell.
Hi, this is Annie from PLANNIE, and welcome to this episode of Plan and Tell, which is a podcast where we interview planners from around the world who share their craziest stories of all the things that went wrong at events and what they did to save the day. For those of you who don't know what PLANNIE is, it's a network of planners and day of producers in cities worldwide that people can hire now on an hourly basis. So it's kind of like taking that full service, all you can eat buffet and turning it into more of a flexible a la carte menu. Also, I just like to say that the purpose of this podcast is not to talk poo-poo or be negative about anyone or anything. It's really for educational purposes and entertainment, but really educational in that planners don't have a class where you can learn about these kind of disasters and what to do and how to troubleshoot. So it's really by sharing our stories that we're able to be like, oh, hey, yeah, next time I have a fire in the middle of my reception, I'm going to do this. Hopefully there's no fire. Okay, so on that note, I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Cassie LaMere of Cassie LaMere Events, who is based out of Austin and was on Party Slate's top 20 planners list. Welcome, Cassie.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here. I'm really excited about our conversation, so I appreciate you having me.
Of course. And first of all, how's Winnie?
Oh, yes, it's all about Winnie. We are new pet parents, and she's doing well. She's a little fluff ball Havanese who we're absolutely in love with, and we're just, in puppy phase. So it's puppy central around here. But
if everyone wants to see what she looks like, she's super cute. You have to go to Cassie's Instagram.
Yeah, she's the new official party animal in our offices.
All right. And just to give people a little background, you've been doing luxury events for about 15 years in Austin. And I think you do weddings, galas, corporate, like all of it, right?
That's correct. Yeah. Over 15 years doing luxury events. Many of my professional years were spent in-house with some well-known luxury brands doing all of their experiential events. And then 5 years ago in 2018, decided to start Cassie LaMere Events. And we do have the privilege of working on a spectrum of projects. Our clients, many of them are CEOs or business owners and also love to entertain. So what we find happens a lot is we're their agency of record for all of their events.
That's great. So the story that you have for us today that we're going to talk about, was that a corporate event or was that a social event?
It was kind of a hybrid, honestly. It was a corporate event for a client who was hosting some high profile guests that were in town to shop the Round Top Antiques Fair, but they had also become friends throughout the process. So it had a nice kind of mix between hybrid, the two worlds. Yeah. But we approached it more as a corporate event, like the level of detail that went into the event and the experience that we were creating. I would say I would envision it more on that level just because of how intricate it was, like
branding and all that kind of stuff, right? Okay.
Yeah, lots of branding, lots of gifting, and a lot of moving parts with such high profile guests. As you can imagine, the expectations were very high, and to wow them, people who've seen it all, done it all.
We have a little bit of background on this event. It's a high profile group. It sounds like it's somewhere in Austin. It's corporate, but also a little bit of like social in there. So tell us what happened. What's the story?
Let's talk about it. So it was a pretty incredible feat. It was an event that was designed. The client came to us and the brief was, I want to create a luxury village in the middle of a pristine field. And I want it to be a 5-star experience where guests can stay on site overnight. It was a multi-day event. We had dinner parties every night, entertainment every night, pop-up shops, activations, hospitality, food and beverage, breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, luxury
And
accommodations.
just, is this like at a hotel, or are we like in a field somewhere? Like, I'm just trying
It's
to,
in a field. Yeah.
like, you're
In a field.
literally taking a field. And wait, so is there, I mean, you said luxury accommodations. Is that like next to a hotel, or what's
We built the accommodations. So they were
okay,
luxury
this is camping.
glamping.
Oh shoot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Luxury glamping with guests
Wow.
who expect the best of the best. So we had frette linens and a chef in residence from New York who has is a classically trained French chef who has a roving kitchen and this Airstream experience. He's used to popping up in remote locations all over the world, and we brought him in to be the chef in residence. And every night's dinner party had a totally different theme and look and feel. So the space was fully transformed every day for these different experiences.
How many
And
guests
we had,
is this for?
it was 11 guests and a crew of 25. So that shows
Okay.
you the level
Wow.
of
Okay. High touch. Yeah.
Yes. And so I lived out there for about 2 weeks setting up this village, and it truly was like a 5-star experience in the middle of a field with no existing infrastructure. So no water, no power, no amenities. Everything was brought in. And this is what I think we do best, is like, you give us this idea, this what if, and we make the impossible possible. And this was a great example. And we did this all, mind you, in 3 months.
Okay.
Wait,
also back up. What time of year is this? Just so I have like an idea.
It was fall.
It's fall. Okay, so it's nice and crisp.
Yes.
Fall glamping. Okay, now I'm in a field. I get it. Now I see the picture.
Yeah. So it was this pristine field on a vista. So it had this gorgeous view of the field and these amazing sunsets. And it was in Round Top. So Round Top's about an hour and a half from Austin, and it's known globally around the world as one of the premier antique destinations. And there's a show that happens twice a year where designers and collectors come in to shop the show. So there's this tiny little town. Normally the population is a few hundred people, and it swells to like 30,000 people that come in to shop the show.
And I imagine it's like fancy antiques. We're not talking like flea market.
Yeah. It's got a wonderful mix. So there's something for everyone. I mean, if you love the thrill of the hunt like I do, and you want to go out and dig and find those treasures, there's certainly locations for that. And then there are really fine European antiques and mid-century pieces, and highly curated. All of the editors for all of the well-known design magazines, all the high-end, well-known interior designers and brands are on site to shop the show. It's just this wonderful resource for I call it a collector's paradise. And it's fortunate for us that it's in our backyard. It's only an hour and a half away. So the thing with the town is, because it is typically and it's actually a wonderful destination year round, whether outside of the seasonal shows, but there aren't a lot of accommodations in towns, and they book up really far in advance. So
that makes sense with the glamping.
Yes,
okay.
Hence why we had to get creative, because everything was already booked by the time the client decided they wanted to do this event. So we had to build it.
So, I mean, you really, I mean, it sounds amazing. I know, I just know it's like I'm watching a movie that I know something's going to go wrong. But now what you're describing, I'm like, very cool. I mean, like, how cool is that to have like a whole village and like luxury, everything, like, I'm sure like all the restroom, shower, all of that, it would be like just top notch. Okay. So, what happened? What went wrong?
So there was the accommodations, and then we had a main tent where all of these dinner parties and nightly performances from different musicians were taking place, and that was really kind of like the communal hub where people could go, and there was lounge furniture, and it was just a space that was activated in different ways. So we were on day 4 of 5 of the event, and we were expecting some inclement weather that evening, and so we had a plan in place. We had a
Is that like rain?
Up.
Was that like a rain?
There was some rain. Yeah, there was a thunderstorm forecasted, so we decided we were to have a crew on watch all night, monitoring looking at the radar and just keeping an eye on and it was really, our focus was the guest comfort level and making sure that they were comfortable in their accommodations. So we had people, and this was like a 5-star hotel. So we had people on shift around the clock, you know, attending to the guests' needs and providing that hospitality. So we decided to have the crew, you know, stationed overnight to monitor weather conditions and to be available if we needed to meet any guest requests. And about 4 a.m., and again, we were all on watch, a tornado came through that was not on the radar. There was no warning, no tornado sirens, no warning, nothing could have been anticipated, and leveled the main tent of the event space in the middle of the night.
Okay,
so
we have to pause here because like I'm a California girl who lived and I've lived in Miami and New York, so I understand earthquakes and I understand hurricanes. I don't know anything about tornadoes. So like I know that usually there's like an alarm or something that people people get, and you're supposed to go in the basement. But like what like and it's like it could hit one thing and then not one thing, but is that normal that you wouldn't get a warning, or like, is this like a freak?
No.
And okay.
Yeah. And it also wasn't, well, one, we don't typically get a lot of tornadoes in this area. And also it wasn't the season for tornadoes.
What's tornado
I grew
season?
up in the Midwest.
Yeah.
It's usually, I mean, it's usually in the spring, and then there's some different peak seasons, but I grew up in Tornado Alley. So I unfortunately know tornadoes, and the town that I'm from was leveled by a tornado several years ago. It was really devastating, but they're, you know, they're a force of nature, as are earthquakes and, you know, other natural disasters. But typically there is a tornado, there can be a tornado watch, then there's a tornado warning. There's like different layers of you know, kind of recommendations and notices from the meteorologist. So we were not under a watch, we were not under a warning. So there was no indication to anticipate this level of severity in the weather. And typically there are sirens that are deployed if there is actual tornadoes within proximity, if it's been reported that one's been touched down within a certain radius, and you do need to seek shelter and evacuate. So the moment that we realized that there was this weather event happening, we evacuated the guests into the as you mentioned, there were some accommodations brought in, some restroom trailers, some very luxury restroom trailers, shower trailers. So those were, you know, metal concealed, very strong structures. So we evacuated guests in the pitch black.
Wait. So like at 4 a.m. your people that are awake realize this is more serious than a storm. So they go around to these luxury high-end guests and they wake them up. I mean, and I've seen only aftermath photos, but like I've seen houses, it looks like houses get destroyed. So, but you've got a tin, something that's a little bit better than a tarp, I guess. And so you're ushering in the middle of the night, all your guests into, you're like, into like a little shower thing.
It was me.
Oh,
it was
my
me
God.
And my team out there in the pouring torrential downpours in the dark, evacuating guests, trying to keep them calm, getting them to safety, getting our crew to safety as well. Because remind you, we had a crew of 25 that was all out on site. So everyone was living in Airstreams and RVs on site. So we had to secure everyone in that respect as well. We had to evacuate the guests. So we were all evacuated. We had them in this particular trailer where they were safe and they were, you know, concealed and protected. There wasn't any sort of like, you know, you want to stay away from like glass or other materials that could be flying or having, you know, impale someone. So we had them located internally in an interior space. And then I was out with the crew assessing the environment, and unfortunately it did come through. And you're right, like the path that it takes is also there's no rhyme or reason to it, and it can veer off. And it came through. It didn't hit the tents where the guests were staying at all, but it leveled the main tent where all of the dinner parties and the stage was set.
I mean, I literally got
I mean,
chills because you cannot predict.
yeah,
I mean, like it's like this part could have be affected, but like if you choose unwisely to huddle in the wrong spot, that's
right,
it. So if it had gone
right.
where all the guests were in instead of the tent, this is scary. And what are you doing walking around outside? I'm like, I want you inside too. Like
I
that's just
know.
so insane.
Honestly, it was, I know, it was one of those moments where you just go into response mode, right?
Wow.
And the adrenaline's going and you just have a responsibility to lead the charge. And as the event producer, and it was my job to go into action, right? And to make sure
Mm,
that we were handling things as quickly as possible, as safely as possible. Thankfully no one was hurt, which is, we're so fortunate that
that's
there were no
really,
injuries or um
yeah.
and but unfortunately there was a loss of inventory and a significant amount of damage that had to be addressed. So first and foremost, everyone was okay. Everyone was, evacuated
How
to
long does this whole thing
safety.
last? Like I have no idea. How long does a tornado last? So you're
It's so quick. It's like that. I mean, it just blows through and in a matter of maybe a minute.
That's it. So like
So
4 a.m. you're
that's it.
you're scooting, and then like 4:01 you're like coast is clear, we're done.
Just
But the
and it just blows through. Yeah.
okay.
And so again, it's dark. So we're not really even sure the level of damage, but we
Mhm.
need to keep the guests in an area that's safe, because we could have down power lines, we could have
All right. Jesus.
glass
Uh-huh.
or different hazards. So we don't need them to be moving around the property, right? Like we needed to be able to assess the environment and see where the hazards were. We had to kill all the power because someone could have
Right,
gotten
right.
electrocuted. So very quickly, where I'm on radio, like kill the power, kill the generators, somebody's with the gas, somebody's out, like it was. I can't even tell you how quickly all of this transpired, and there almost wasn't even time to. You just have to act, right? And this is where your instinct and your experience comes into play, that you have been in enough situations on site with events and having risk management plans in place, and having obviously gone through worst case scenarios and solving for that, and having addressed those things and being very nimble. But that is something that's like a muscle that has to be trained, in
Mm,
my opinion. And because we have that experience, and because we work with extremely talented professionals, I mean, this is a testament to the crew that we work with, and that the team that we hand select, that everyone was able to mobilize and to go into response mode
mm.
as quickly as they did, and all of us be able to ensure, first and foremost, the safety of our guests and our crew, and then also put plans into place to deal with assess the damage, and eventually we had to put together a full cleanup um, program. So we're out there, guests are secured. We assess that we've lost the main tent. I mean, and there were like 3-foot stakes in the ground, like metal stakes that were completely bent. Half of our furniture was off in a field. Tables were split in half. AV furniture was damaged. I mean, it's the worst case
I
scenario. I mean, it's the
mean,
worst thing. Yeah,
for the
you
stuff,
could
but I mean,
ever.
I'm listening to this being like, thank bejesus that it didn't go to the people, because if it's like bending
Yes.
metal things in half and tents, I
Yes.
mean, ugh. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those like apocalyptic scenes that you just in your worst nightmare you can never. And i I laugh. I'm not laughing. I'm just, this is the first time I've ever talked about it, and I cannot, I have goosebumps. Like I cannot explain to you how terrifying it was to be in this moment, and to be trying to just manage everything as efficiently and professionally as possible. And it was devastating because we had built this incredible
I mean, on so many
experience, and
levels. Yeah.
yeah, and then the final day was really going to be like the culminating day. There was going to be this big dinner party and all of these. So then it's kind of like the event that could have been, right? Like
It's disappointing.
there's this moment that was lost, and for the guests, I just didn't want them to end on this, right? Like this isn't how we want to end an experience and send guests off. So what I was really proud of is I feel like in moments like this, when you're faced with these trials and tribulations and crisis and natural disasters, it really shows what you're capable of and it shows what you're made of. And for our team, the way that we rallied and pivoted, we actually decided that they needed to still have the final night dinner.
You're crazy.
So
I'd be like, okay, everyone, thanks for coming. Sorry about yesterday, but it's over.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was determined to end on a high note. So we created what I called a movable feast, and we packed everyone up and moved them to Austin. And the chef and his team relocated to Austin. Our vendors that were on their way into town for the final night, we called them mid,
Change of
transit,
location.
turn around, go to Austin.
Wow.
We're moving the party, and again, this was all calls that I had to make very quickly, and then also to rally the team and bring them together and say, this is the plan. I need a crew here on cleanup. I need a crew going to Austin to make this event happen. So we had to reformulate, right, like the production plans and what everyone's role was. And again, I cannot say enough how professional this team was and how everyone rose to the occasion. And they could have said, no, we can't do this. It's not possible. We're not set up for this. But everyone, I think, really collectively shared this desire to ensure the show went on and to give guests this final send off that was, something memorable and not
I think it's already memorable, but I mean, in a good memorable.
Yeah. For a good way.
Yeah.
And so we did. We took the event to Austin. Wow. We had the final dinner party. I was on site with the cleanup crew, drove to Austin. I've been up for at least 24 hours at this point. Did the event in Austin, then drove back to Round Top because
did the event in Austin mean? Did you do the exact same, like, are they now where in Austin are you? Like, you just found another venue, or?
We had the client's private home that we were able to utilize.
Nice. So it must be, yeah.
Yeah. So we picked up everything. So catering, their mobile Airstream, their Land Rover Defender with a live fire grill on the back, their entire crew, all of the place settings, all of the entertainment, the activations, everything moved. Floral moved to Austin. Everything shifted. So we had the final night dinner party in a slightly different iteration in Austin. They had the opportunity to celebrate. Obviously, they were bonded for life after an experience.
This is what we call trauma bonding. And I would say the guests, as well as anyone that worked on this event forever, ever, ever, has a very special bond that they'll have forever and ever.
Yes. Absolutely. And I will say the spirit amongst the guests that night was at an all-time high. They were laughing and singing and celebrating. And yes, it certainly bonded them. And I think after having a shared experience like that, where, things are put into perspective, they were all just happy to be together and to be able to share a meal around a table and to have that, camaraderie and the connection, and they were amazed at how we were able to have this movable feast and still provide that final night experience for them. And it was really so touching to just witness everything that all of our vendors did to ensure that this experience still came to fruition and to take care of our guests. And I'm so grateful for just the dedication of everyone to go above and beyond, which truly they did to make this
Well,
happen.
I'm gonna also just, I mean, credit you too, because you're building this team, and I hope your clients fully understand, like, you're truly the captain of this ship that was like going down, and
Right,
you really made sure everyone got on the
right,
lifeboats, but then had a party on the lifeboat.
right.
You really, really saved the
Yes,
day. I mean, like, just like I can imagine, like, also as a planner, like, imagine, like, okay, you're cleaning up this devastated site, but
yes,
then, okay, also now I have to also replace everything that was in the tent that doesn't exist at the home.
right.
And just like, I mean, you're probably like, damn, I had 3 weeks or 3 months to plan this. And now I have 24 hours when I've been sleep deprived and probably shaken, I'm
Yeah.
going to imagine. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
this is
Yeah. I mean,
a crazy tornado
I
story.
still have truly, I still have PTSD from it. And that's why I haven't really talked about it. And I'm grateful to you for giving me a forum and platform to have some talk therapy about everything that we experienced. But yeah, and because I needed to go
Mm,
into response mode, I really didn't have an opportunity for like me to assess right what was happening. It was about taking care of everyone
mm.
and ensuring that things were managed. And so I didn't have the time to even think about or process what was happening. But yes, managing a full cleanup crew, calling all the vendors and letting you know there was significant damage
Where
to your
you're like,
equipment.
hi, I'm not going to be
Yes,
returning your tent or
yes,
couch.
yes, because they're expecting
Wow.
that inventory to come back, and it's likely already rented for another event, right? So I think I'm
Mm.
going to be blacklisted, and no one's ever going to want to work with me again because I'm
It's not your
calling to let
fault.
them
I mean,
know,
yeah,
I know, but like you have all these, oh my
yeah.
gosh, like no one wants to have to make that phone call. And we're collecting debris and making sure that as people are working through the damage and the items, that of course they're safe as well, because there was a lot of broken glass, there was a lot of shattered wood, and there was loss of stemware and plates and china.
I mean,
And
the
so to
loss
your
of
point, like,
stemware is the
yeah,
least of your concerns, but I love that it's
yeah,
on your list.
but to your point,
Yeah.
like if I'm trying to set up a party in Austin, I'm trying to
Oh, right.
pull, like source, what do I still have that I can use? And it was really special pieces. So a lot of the pieces were antique and one of a kind. And so there was a lot of layers, right, of just having to oversee these different facets of what was happening in the moment, and ensuring that everyone was well cared for, vendors, guests, also the ancillary
Mm,
vendors who we've rented equipment
right.
from. And just being really communicative and quick to get everything, though, kind of shifting gears. But when we found that we were at a moment where guests were safe and it was okay to remove them from the area where we had evacuated them to, we took them down to a barn on the lower level part of the property, that the person who owned the land that we were renting it from was kind enough to open up that space for us.
Whoa.
And we
Yeah.
had our chef came in and was making coffee and caviar and waffles and giving them
Okay,
blankets
post
and
tornado caviar.
yes,
Anybody? I mean, were the
yeah,
guests rattled? I mean, wait a
they were.
you are making me
Yes.
think of like the story of like the musicians playing on the Titanic. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, this ship has gone down, and you are just making sure that the guest experience is somehow still luxury while you're
Yes.
in like natural disaster, like
Right.
post.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, we were trying to provide them some creature comforts to help. Some of them were in various stages of shock, and yes, they were rattled and they were cold. And so we've got blankets, and we're trying to, just make them as comfortable as possible, and let them know that they're our priority, and obviously make them feel well cared for. So but it was all of these moments of where everyone just rose
Mm.
to the occasion and really had this humility and this sense of all being in this together, and jumping in and just doing what we could to rally and, go forward. So it was absolutely one of the worst moments I've ever experienced
I don't
in
think
an
I've
event.
ever had I mean, I'm thinking of my events and like my disasters sound like little tiny baby stories now. I don't think I've ever had like anyone's life really in danger, like including my own or all of the guests at an
Right.
event. So, I mean, hats off to
Yeah.
you. You are like, that's, if I want to be around you when there's a natural disaster, like, and I just feel like you really had to go into action. And I hope your
Mhm.
client thanked you like properly, because you went
Yeah.
really beyond the call of like what was, I'm sure, in your contract for that event. Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, we were fortunate, like the client and the guests were all very gracious. I mean, obviously they could have, chosen to
Mhm.
respond differently to such a dramatic and traumatic situation, but we were fortunate that everyone was, very gracious and kind and understanding that this was nothing that any of us could have planned for or predicted. And that luckily we had things in
Mhm.
place to, respond quickly and ensure guest safety. But I do think it's a conversation to be having with climate change. We're seeing more and more
Texas is
unusual
always in
weather
the
events.
news. You've got like ice, you've
Yeah,
got like, yeah, heat, you've got,
yeah,
yeah.
and across, anywhere. I
Mhm.
just think in our industry, it's something to be talking about because we're seeing more and more natural disasters and events in
Mhm.
seasons where it's not typical or
Mhm.
more extreme. And this is certainly something that I I would have anticipated experiencing, and yet we need to be prepared and have tools and resources in place, again, for these worst case scenarios. So
Well, and I'm going to add to that. I think this is one of
yeah.
my things, especially with PLANNIE, is I really like working with local planners, because if someone had hired me, like a California, New Yorker, to go do an event, and then there was a tornado. Let me tell you my preparedness, like what to do when that went down. I mean, I could just do like hurricane stuff, but I wouldn't know what is its path, how long does this
Right.
last, are we in the clear, like any of that kind
Hmm.
of stuff. So I really think that it's that expertise that you have not only in events
Hmm.
but in your area, and in knowing how to
Right.
respond, and the resources that will be available to you in that area in order to like recover and somehow host the final fifth night still, even so.
So I mean, I think all of this to say there are
Mm,
certain things that we can prepare for and certain things that are still, as much as we like to plan and control, that's
mm,
the role that we're in, right? There's going to be unanticipated things that go wrong. And as the team that's responsible for deploying the rest of the vendors and managing these situations in these crisis scenarios, that's really where that experience comes in. And ensuring, for me, I am hand selecting the vendors that we work with, to your point earlier, and surrounding ourselves with truly the best of the best, that I have confidence in their expertise in their respective field. And in these moments is, I always say it's great to have a beautiful event and have a wonderful planner, but in these moments is really when you see the value of having a
yes.
professional planner and someone who has experience and expertise. These, when shit hits the fan, can I
You
say shit?
you can say shit, I think.
This is the moment
Yeah.
where you realize why it's so important to have a planner and to have a professional. And this is, part of what our duty is to
Mhm.
our clients and our guests. And so
I'm gonna.
I can't.
I usually say this in like part of my sales process. If someone asks like, why do I cost more, or why, and it's really based on my experience and everything. But I say this line, and it just like is at the front of my brain, especially in your situation. I'm like, you don't want to discount parachute, and the planner
Mhm,
is your parachute. And I can't.
mhm,
You were that in so many ways for them, that they sat
mhm.
like very like gently landed on the ground as a result of
Right.
your quick thinking and action.
Yeah, and it's also important, like if I'm breaking down or freaking out, what is that gonna,
Right.
then the guests are gonna feed off of our energy. So it was important that I maintained composure, that I was calm, that I seemed in control of the situation, because that obviously is what the guests are gonna feed off of. And so I wanted them to have confidence that they were safe and that they were, gonna be cared for, and that
You're like,
that
totally
composure.
normal. Don't worry,
Yeah,
everyone. Yeah, just
yeah.
caviar. Yeah.
That composure
Wow.
under extreme scenarios of stress or
Mm.
crisis is really a skill, and it's something that has to be honed. And also, I come from a performing arts background. I do give a little credit to that. Like, I think I'm used to, if you mess up a dance step, you still have to continue, right? And so I'm used to
How funny.
maintaining that performance and that show face, and not letting them know that everything's crumbling behind the scenes. That's what we're there to do. But I also can't stress enough the importance of having risk management plans for your events, and making sure that we're having those difficult conversations that no one wants to have
Mm.
about, contingency plans,
You know,
inclement weather, safety.
I have a conversation about rain, but I am thinking back at every single let's say all my LA events. I've never talked about what if there's an earthquake or what if there's
Mhm.
even a fire. I mean, like we only get as far as rain.
Right.
Um, so
Yeah. Or
that's
what if there's,
mhm.
what if there's a active armed shooter? Like, what if
Oh,
there's, like
oh,
the
yeah,
I mean, the reality,
yeah.
I mean, we see stories every single day about, these traumatic events. And so it's the side that no one wants to talk about and no one wants to deal with. And obviously it's great to live in, a optimistic world, but it's important as a planner, that part of the service you are providing to your clients is working through those worst case scenarios and
Mm,
solving for them.
totally.
And they're going to look to you if something goes wrong. You're the person they're looking to, like, what do we do? And so, it's
Gosh.
you have to give yourself, the resources and the support to be prepared to handle those situations to the best of your abilities. And again, there's still going to be things that you can't plan for, but I've sat, I've participated in some risk management seminars. I know there are professionals that you can engage, that's specifically their area of expertise. But it's an important part of the planning process, that if you don't have maybe that experience, or you haven't been a part of some of those moments of crisis, it might not be something that, is on your radar. So I definitely encourage, if, for planners who are listening, and then also for clients who are listening, to have those conversations with your planner and
Mhm.
understand what they're forecasting for, and making sure that you're in good hands in that sense.
That's a really, really good message. I mean, I kind of think of it as like teachers, they went in for teaching, but then they have to have a few extra skills these days or just be,
Hmm.
aware of things. So, I got into it thinking I'm going to help my clients pick a shade of taupe,
Hmm.
but now you're totally correct. It is part of the job. And, we are kind of those captain of the ship or team
Yep.
leaders. And it
Hmm.
is like prudent to have some sort of light conversation about the what if. And
Right.
this is you where your what if is like a serious life threatening what if. So
Yeah, and listen, like, this is one example. I've also been in a government shutdown with an event that was in a federal building, and 24 hours before the event, the government shut down. I've had an emergency appendectomy, um, 48 hours before an event. I mean, there's multiple scenarios I could list where
and this is
the
why we
that
have this podcast, and we're going to have you back to tell
yeah,
all those stories because
but
and people don't know. Like planners get together, all we do is like share all of our stories, and then I mean, I've always learned a ton from people. Like I'm like, oh right, check for the generator for that,
right.
because it happened to a planner friend of mine. So
Hmm.
we will absolutely get to those stories, but this story was incredible. I wish I could give you like a hug. I know it was. I can't
Thank
imagine.
you.
Like I mean, I know it's like you told me it's the first time you have been speaking
Yeah.
about this. So
Yeah.
uh,
Thank
this
you.
must,
It's the first time publicly that I've talked about it, and I'm proud of myself for getting
You
through it
should be
without
proud of
crying.
yourself. No, I mean, but you should just be proud of yourself for how you handled the whole situation. So I'm proud of you
Thank you.
for, and I think
Thank
you
you.
do such a great job of representing, like, I mean, this is more than what I thought, but what planners can and sometimes are faced with. So,
Yeah, enough
okay.
time has passed now that I've been able to process it in my own way, and it's something that will stick with you forever. But I'm grateful for the opportunity to share what I've learned, and hopefully prevent someone from having to experience these lessons in the moment, and maybe shed some light on some emergency preparedness and the importance of planners in those crisis moments.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think so. And I think you're a great example of like really top of the game and how to like gracefully recover from that as well. Okay, well, we can't leave it on that kind of a heavy note. So I'm going to switch gears here for us. And I always like to ask planners, because kind of going back to not only do you know like the both best local tips, but all the
Mhm.
like event hacks. And it doesn't have to be for a
Mhm.
tornado recovery. But do you have anything that you want to share that's like a favorite like trick in the bag of yours?
I do. And it actually kind of relates. I have a wonderful little mobile power source, like a mini
What?
generator, basically, that I take with me on site. And it's so useful in a variety of applications. But if you're ever in a situation where you need to have a particular activation and you don't have access to power, it carries a significant amount of amps that you can plug directly in. So I've had situations where I have a barista cart in kind of a remote location, and I need them on a separate circuit. So we've tapped them into
Ooh.
this. Or if you need to be able to have multiple charging stations for your crew on site, everyone can plug into this. If you do have instances where power goes down, it's a nice little backup. So it's something I take with me on all of my projects, and I can't tell you how many times it's come in handy and been useful.
Oh, you mean like when the time the acoustic guitarist showed up and he was like had an electric guitar and was like, "Where do I plug in?" And I'm like, in this
No.
field that you were supposed to have an acoustic guitar." I'm like, "I don't know." So that would have been
There
really
you
handy.
go.
Will you
Yes.
share the link? Like, is it expensive?
Yes.
Like, I'm imagining hopefully it's like little and not like $1,000. Okay.
It's very transportable. It's a great item to have in your kit, and it's something that I have found to be very helpful in those scenarios. So I'm happy to share.
Okay. No, that's a great one. Yeah. Power is nice. A lot of things need power.
Yes,
So,
a lot of
okay,
things
well,
need power.
well, I love that tip. I'm gonna, on that note, I'm gonna say thank you so much for sharing your story and being on today's episode. I know I learned a lot. It really has me thinking about my prepared plans. I don't. And so I think we're planting a seed in many people's minds of like, okay, let me
Mhm.
consider this and just incorporate it into my planning process. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I thank you. I want people to survive and thrive. And so, all of that comes down to our gift of planning and preparedness. So this is just another facet of what we do, and we're all amazing at it. So I'm happy if anyone wants to reach out with questions, or I love kind of engaging with our party loving community. So please do so via our Instagram, and we'll continue the conversation. But thank you for having me.
There are so many things that planners do undercover, but this is truly above and beyond. And it wasn't even like undercover. I'm sure all of her guests super, super appreciated that she really like remained calm, went into like action plan mode, and even like what, still passing around caviar and then somehow still hosting that fifth night. She's incredible. I'd have been like, goodbye, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. But really, really impressed with how she handled such an event. And I know I'm really thinking about like, okay, I've got to be better prepared. Like, I don't think about that kind of disaster coming through. And she's totally right. We need to have a conversation and include that in our planning to make sure that there's some sort of like emergency contingency plan, whether it's man-made or by nature. So very, very insightful. Thank you so much, Cassie. Okay, that's it for this episode. And thank you so much for listening. And please join us next time as we have more planners plan and tell some of their crazy stories of what happened at their event and how they saved the day and what we can learn from it. If you're planning an event and would like some professional advice or support on the day, even if it's just for a few hours, PLANNIE is here as a resource to you with a network of top planners like today's guest. And if you're a planner who had something crazy happen at their event, please go to plannie.com and submit your story. We'd love to share it.